Hello and welcome to Ramblings of an Addict. Today's podcast is going to be a must listen for all Christian parents. Typically, I direct more of my podcasts towards the moms, but today I'm just feeling incredibly called to make sure that we're talking about parents as a whole because it is our job to take care of our kids. God gifted them to us, and it is our job to make sure we are engaging when the time is right. But today, I want to talk to those Christian parents who are concerned about the future of their family and their community. Recent events this past week with the shooting in Tennessee has shown that, yet again, we cannot afford to have blinders on or think that it's someone else's job to stand up. We need to stand together and speak up for what we truly believe in. And in this podcast, I will be sharing my opinions on the importance of paying attention to current events and how we as parents, Christian parents, can get involved in making a difference. So today's episode is definitely a little bit more intense, but this is information that more of us need to be rambling about. Hi, I'm Jenna Dix, and I'm always rambling. Just ask my husband. I have a great family and a pretty cool life, but I'm a recovered alcoholic. That's hard to say, but my goal is to inspire and educate to help others hopefully find life beyond an addiction. I'm all things: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Getting healthy, momming, and politics. Get offended easily? You better stop listening. There is no point in wasting that Botox by stressing yourself out listening to a podcast. Welcome to Ramblings of an Addict with Jenna Dix. Today's episode brought to you by products and services that I am thoroughly addicted to. Are you feeling a bit exposed and vulnerable in this crazy world? Do you want to have the power to fight back against any legal issue that comes your way? Well, let me tell you about my friend Susan Taple, independent associate with LegalShield. LegalShield is like your own personal superhero, ready to swoop in and save the day whenever you need legal help. Whether it's a traffic ticket, a contract dispute, or even identity theft, LegalShield has got your back. With LegalShield, you'll have access to a team of experienced lawyers who can help you navigate the legal system and protect your rights. Get the peace of mind you deserve today by contacting Susan Taple with LegalShield. Legal help made simple. Check the show notes for more information. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I really am feeling called to share these tips and ideas with you. Usually when I do a podcast, I have been chewing on some ideas for sometimes just a couple days, but for the most part, at least 1 to 2 weeks. Been collecting information, been really thinking on it. I'll keep a notebook near me and I'll just jot down ideas as I'm going. And this one literally was like a calling on my heart to share today. I'm talking like 2 hours ago. It's definitely a more on the fly type of deal, but I'm of the belief as well that sometimes that's how God works. And when something comes into your heart that you feel like I have to stand up, you have to listen. So today's episode, like I said in the introduction, it's going to be more intense. But I think as Christian parents, it's time that, we lean into that intensity a little bit and realize that, hey, sometimes, life isn't always fun. It's not going to be always super entertaining. Sometimes we need to learn about the things that make us feel a little bit uncomfortable so that we can do what's best for not only ourselves, but more importantly, for our families. So for those of you listening, just a little background. So I am very involved in the political space here in Minnesota. If you have not yet listened to my previous episodes, I do have a couple on that along with my background, things of that sort. But when I say I'm very involved, very recently, I got involved in politics here in Minnesota about 3 years ago now at this point. It was when the riots started in Minneapolis, when COVID was kind of really at its height, and I felt like I had no other choice but to get involved because my thoughts and my opinions, and at the same time, my calling on my heart was starting to be incredibly strong. So I dove in strong. I'm not going to dive too deep into my story, but just so you are aware, I am aligned with the conservative side of things. I am actually the secretary of the Minnesota GOP. So I am very aware for the most part of different things going on in the political spaces, in current events, things of that sort. I am a nerd. And even before I was really, really involved in politics, I still was trying to pay attention. I would say close to the last 5 years or so, because as a parent, it's important to know what's going on and what is, being left for our kids. So just wanted to give you that little background. And today, like I said, this is an on-the-fly type of deal. Reason being, this week has been very intense in the current events space. I honestly feel it's safe to say that, it's been a good solid 3 years. My rear end got motivated to dive in for a reason, and it's because the current events have been flying at us so fast. And I know you can look back in history and, I don't think there's ever been a completely zen or peaceful time by any means. But these last couple years have been freaking nutso. This week alone, especially for people more on that conservative side, I won't even lie. Donald Trump was indicted yesterday. That lit a fire under a lot of conservative people's asses, and they are pissed off. In my opinion, fairly so. But at the same time, I do honestly feel that, yes, that is a completely appalling decision that went down. But I don't even think it's just the conservatives that are feeling ticked off about that. I think even a lot of people in the middle are feeling like, what the hell is going on? No one's above the law is what they're stating, which, okay. But really, did President Clinton not pay off Monica Lewinsky? Correct? There's been a lot of politicians who've done a lot of illegal things. I'm thinking like Hunter Biden, things of that sort. And people turn the other cheek, they just ignore it. And I'm not saying anybody should be above the law. The double standards are absolutely disgusting. And I don't know. I just feel like a misdemeanor. Did he do something wrong? I mean, you probably shouldn't do things like have affairs, right? God says things like that. That's pretty much a commandment. You don't do that. But I don't want to get too deep on the weeds in this one. I just personally feel like really that is where the funds are going right now to go after President Trump, when New York has some of the highest crime rates that they've seen in years. It just feels very ass backwards, like politically driven versus, hey, let's actually take care of our citizens and our people. Because if that were the case, those resources would be going to, going after true criminals that are affecting their community there. But that's my soapbox. Like I said, that definitely pissed a lot of people off on the conservative side this week. It definitely woke me up. But more so, the biggest thing has been the shooting that happened on Monday. And yes, there's been a lot of shootings. When I was at my last corporate healthcare job, I was actually on a committee that was tasked with paying attention to current events. I actually volunteered for the committee because not many people there were paying attention to current events, and I already was. So to me, it just seemed like this is a no-brainer. I'm already watching current events anyway. I might as well utilize this information, right? So anyway, so anytime something tragic happened, it was my job to let our coaching staff know, hey, XYZ happened. Let's make sure that we are, keeping that in mind and being extremely mindful when we are reaching out to our clients. Because especially like if something happened like this past week, right? So that shooting in Tennessee, if we were reaching out to a client in Tennessee, our verbiage, our mannerisms, the way we're talking to them is definitely going to change. So, I know firsthand there's been a lot of shootings, but this one on Monday, it was at Covenant School in Tennessee, a Christian school. The girl who was living as a trans male, recently, from what I have read and heard from multiple sources, went in and we lost the lives of 6 people, 3 children, 3 adults. Many people would look at this and say, that's a hate crime. That, there's a very strong feeling, shit, that was a hate crime because she went after a Christian school. Yet, nothing of that sort has been stated by leadership that's very much in power right now. Conservative leaders had said things like that. A lot of conservative figures in society have said things like that, like this is a hate crime. But the people who are actually making a lot of the decisions have not. So this horrific shooting happens. We lose the lives of 6 beautiful souls. And our president goes and does an announcement on this. He is already completely aware that a shooting has happened. 6 people are now gone. And he goes out there and makes a fucking joke about ice cream. That makes my stomach twist and turn. You are the leader of our country, and you find it's appropriate right now to joke? You should be going out there being incredibly somber. I don't give a shit losing it or not. And if that's the case, let's figure some stuff out, America, right? But losing lives, the president makes a joke immediately after, because apparently ice cream is all that matters in his mind. Shortly after, the White House releases that they are now, because this individual, Audrey was her birth name. She's now going by her version of a male name. It is what it is, right? But because she was trans, the White House and a lot of people have decided to use this, instead of honoring the 6 lives lost, use this as an opportunity, number 1, to go after guns, because that's what they do every time a shooting goes down. But number 2, trans platform. I have never been so lost for words these last couple days, because are you freaking kidding me? She chose to walk into that school and shoot it up, killing people. And people are out there saying it's because she was in pain, because she was trans and struggling with, all of the hatred she's received, or struggling because she went to school in that school. She went there when she was younger. She's 28, or she was 28 when she just did this, but she went to school at Covenant. Well, maybe they made her feel bad because Covenant is a school that they live the Bible. They believe that you are born male or female. So maybe, they made her feel wrong, or maybe they hurt her, or things of that sort. And almost justifying. I'm not going to say almost. Many people are justifying what she did. So much so that the White House decides to declare that Joseph Biden is declaring today, March 31st, Trans Visibility Day, to make sure that they are being seen and being honored and receiving the support that they need. I'm, like I said, I've been lost for words on this. I went on to social media today, and I'm looking on some of the news sites that I follow. Today in the Tennessee Capitol, where the shooting went down, their activists there are standing 7 fingers in the air. Meaning, don't forget to honor the 7th that died that day. I am sorry. I'm not going to honor somebody that chose to go in and murder people. You put that 7th finger down. There are 6 lives that need to be honored. 6. That 7th chose her fate. In the Minnesota Capitol today, which is in my backyard basically, as they are honoring Trans Visibility Day, this brand new fucking holiday, they're doing a drag show in the middle of the Minnesota Capitol Rotunda. Because that's appropriate. It has been absolutely twisting and turning in my stomach. I cannot even begin to understand why this is where our society is at. So instead of just sitting there and being absolutely disgusted, I thought to myself, well, shit, I have a podcast for a reason. I want to make sure I'm sharing tips that are tangible and actionable with people that, number one, are my people. You may have just listened to that last 13 minutes of me rambling away and been like, fuck this girl. Okay. All right. We don't see eye to eye. All right. We're not each other's cup of tea, and that's okay. You know, there's some teas I absolutely do not like. That doesn't mean that I don't like other teas, right? You don't want to be my cup of tea? I'm cool with that. If you just listen to that last 13 minutes and you're like, Jenna, you are so right on. Let's dive into some tips then. So, all I know, I got involved in politics because I thought to myself, I don't want to leave a shitty world for my kids. Right now, I'm already worried for the world that I am leaving them. And then I sit there and I just think for a minute and I'm like, what's it going to be like if I have grandkids someday? Right? Max only 3 right now. Haley's obviously a little bit older, 15, but 3 years old. Think about when she has kids. What is the world going to be like when my grandbabies are walking this planet? If you have fears like that, here are some tips that we need to start to lean into to ensure we are doing all we can do to keep the world on better track. I think we all know that, yes, evil will continue. The devil is not going to stop working. We also all pray that Jesus comes back someday. But until then, we need to do what we can. So my first tip for you, number 1, right off the bat, Christian parent, you better be on your knees praying. Having that open communication with our Lord. Because He is in charge. Surround yourself with other people of faith as well. We need to stick together. God never said this is going to be easy. And honestly, I think it's very clear it's not going to be. The fact that a hate crime happened, and yet it's not even being called that. It could get rough, and we need to stick together. Make sure you are, in addition to praying, You are reading the Bible and knowing His Word, knowing what He says. So number one, you have that as your backbone. You have that as your strength. That's your armor. But in addition, you can help lead your family. You know, this one thing that I've done, because I've read the Bible cover to cover. I did the Bible in a Year app to listen to the Bible in an entire year. I'm actually doing that now. I'm doing the youth version now this year, just to get a different spin on it and help me maybe get in a place where I can explain it to my girls better. So yes, I have gone through the Bible now, cover to cover twice. I'm listening a third time. And in addition to that, though, I thought to myself, I want to join a Bible study. So I did. You know, there's plenty of them out there. You know, you can find a women's one. You can find one at your church. You can find one online. But know God's Word. And then finally, with this first one, really leaning into our spirituality, make sure that you're praying for God to show you what your purpose is within this whole topic. Maybe it's just that you are educated, so you know. Maybe God's pulling on your heart and He has a calling for you that you've been denying. And maybe it's time to tune in. My second tip for you is make sure you're paying attention to current events and how those current events are affecting your family. If there are rulings coming down that are going to impact you, or more importantly, your kids, pay attention and speak up when needed. I know here in Minnesota, we have had a lot of bills go through that we have had to speak up. I've written my personal senator multiple times. I know a lot of my friends have. I know a lot of people who have not gotten involved before are starting to reach out, which is amazing to see. And that, my friends, is what needs to happen. When there's bills coming down saying, you know, abortion till birth, you know, that children can receive gender surgeries. My words are skipping my mind at the moment. When they're going after Christian colleges and saying they can't partake in PSEO programs, we need to start to make sure we are aware of these current happenings, these current events, and wait a minute, what can I do? These policies are going to impact my family. So stay in the know. The third thing is make sure that you are staying educated in, I want to say, as neutral of a way as possible. So there's going to be, obviously, a lot of news sources out there that if you follow just certain ones, you're going to get a slant. Make sure you're following multiple sources so that you are able to kind of decipher and find the middle ground feel. My personal recommendation for this is what I do personally, I follow several news sources. So yeah, I do follow the CNNs, the NBCs, the Fox News. You're getting a pretty, obviously some of those are very left-leaning. Some of them are a little more right-leaning. But you're able to kind of pull things and hopefully find more of a middle ground. If you are local here in Minnesota, I also encourage that you follow Alpha News, ALPHA. They're definitely more on the conservative side of things, but in addition, they also do a lot of just on the ground reporting that's fact. And that is what we need. Go to sources that are very, go directly to the source, I should say, rather. So like, for example, if you want to find out, people are talking that, oh my goodness, did you hear about this new bill, blah, 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 and you're like, well, I want to learn about that. Instead of just going to a news source and getting their perspective, go to the government website, go to the Minnesota legislator page or go to, whatever state you're in. Read the bill itself so that you know exactly what it's about. Another app that I've referred to on this podcast before is All Sides. And it gives you a news story. Typically, it only does like the top ones across the country, which, okay, I'd rather have that than none, right? But it'll break it down into, okay, this article here is more on the left. This article here is more on the right. Here are just the straight facts, and you can read all of that. Another final thing that I recommend so that you're getting yourself educated, but figuring out kind of where that balance is I follow political activists, political leaders, people that are more in the public eye on both sides of the spectrum. So even though I am clearly on the GOP side and follow plenty of Republican leaders and activists, I have ensured myself, or I've made sure I've gone on there and followed people on the DFL side as well, or on the Democratic. So that way, not only am I just seeing my like-minded beliefs, but I'm also seeing people on the other side, so I can hopefully feel out, okay, where is there kind of a middle ground? I also can see the other side's perspective, which at points it has been helpful because sometimes, especially when I've been talking to a lot of like-minded people, I can get really wrapped up in that. And then if I go look at some other people, I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what they're talking about, or that's what they're thinking. It at least helps me see that perspective. My next tip for you is making sure that you are getting involved in your community. And I don't want to dive too deep into this. I'm just chewing on this as I say this, but I don't want to dive too deep into this. I will link the last episode that I did with specifics on how to get involved in your community. Whether it's, you're just starting to attend local government meetings, or maybe you're going to find your local BPOU, your local Republican club, or you're going to join a affiliate group like a Women's Federation of Republican Women, or things like that. But make sure you're taking those steps to actually get involved. My next tip is making sure that if you don't feel like, okay, I want to get involved, I want to go to the BPOU or things like that, that's not your jam. Okay. Make sure you're educating yourself when voting time comes. Minnesota, the U.S. as a whole, we rank really poorly in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the percentage of people that actually vote. It is really bad. And there's no reason. You look around the country, there's polling places, a mere 3-4 blocks typically from any which house in that community. I mean, I think of Woodbury where I live, and there are, oh my goodness, like a ton of polling locations on election day. There is no reason we cannot carve out that time to go. And here's the deal. Election day doesn't work for you. Early voting is a thing, my friends, and it is really easy to go do. There is no reason we should not be voting. And if, I don't really know much about the candidates, is your reasoning? Well, then open your eyes and learn a little bit. Because if you are not 1,000% saying, I am totally thrilled with how this country is going, you need to be voting. Which I am willing to bet you no one right now in the U.S. is going to say, I'm 1,000% on board with everything. All right, my next tip is making sure you are the kind of next step. So getting involved, voting. If you're feeling called, like, I need to do something, I don't want to ever run for office or things like that. Okay, that's a calling God only puts on certain people's hearts, right? But make sure if you are truly believing in an organization or an individual, so like a candidate, that you are donating. It doesn't need to be tons of money. Honestly, every little bit does help. I do suggest either A, if it's going to a candidate or an organization that you know really, really, really well directly, great. If you're going to donate to something other than that, like you're like, oh, I think this is a cool cause or something of that sort, do your research. Like, make sure the money is going to where you want it to go. My next thought is, so I already touched a little bit on praying, the Bible, things of that sort. But make sure, in addition, you are praying for our leadership. That is part of our role as Christians. And I can tell you, I have had plenty of internal battles where I'm like, I do not want to pray for certain leaders right now. God doesn't care. He wants us to live with a loving heart, just like Jesus did. And sometimes there's days I am ticked off. And I sit and think to myself, like, okay, just pray. Pray that they see God's way. Some days that's my prayer. Like, I hope that so-and-so sees God's work today. I hope that he opens his heart to God. You know, even I remember when the Ukrainian-Russian war broke out, and I prayed that next day in the morning, like I always do, and I wrote in my prayer book, and I wrote in there, I prayed for Russia and Putin, and I know a lot of people, because this actually came up at church the following weekend, and a lot of people were like, you know, yeah, I understand why you wouldn't want to pray for him, but we need to make sure we're praying for them. We need to do our job as Christians, and sometimes it's not easy, but we need to lead with a heart just like Jesus. My next tip is making sure that you're finding your hills. I've talked about this before in one of my past podcasts, but it truthfully is so overwhelming when you think about all the different issues or the different things that you could get involved in, or the reasons, rather, you do feel called, right? There's a lot. And my suggestion for everyone and myself is pick your hills. You cannot go after everything. You will go crazy. So it's better to find the hills that really match your heart and your passion, because that also will help better match your bandwidth, right? So for me personally, the reason I got involved, the reason I continue to stay focused, the hills I continue to remind myself, okay, stick here, things that will impact my kids, things that will impact kids as a whole. And I'm talking, obviously, you know, I have a 3-year-old and I have a 15-year-old, so my span of kid is quite large. But focusing on those things that are affecting the next generations. Do I still see importance in things like, you know, double taxing Social Security on our seniors? Do I see importance in making sure that, you know, nursing homes are staffed appropriately and that they have solid regulations and things like that? Yeah. Do I see importance in, like, border issues, stuff like that? 1,000%. But I also know that God is putting callings into other people's hearts, hopefully, right? I pray for that, to focus on those hills while I focus on these that I have more calling to do. And it helps me kind of keep my sanity. I can't focus on it all, and neither can you. So figure out what your hills are. You know, maybe you personally are somebody that's like, I'm going all in on, you know, medical freedom because of, you know, XYZ. Or maybe, you know, I'm going to 1,000% go in on focusing on education type things. Pick those topics, pick those hills. And lastly, my kind of final one to wrap things up is make sure you know that you have a voice for a reason. You have a voice that matters. Make sure you're standing up and speaking out. I honestly, this is my opinion, but I honestly think we are in the spot we're in because so many fucking people have not spoke up. We let a small percentage stand up and scream louder than all of our voices combined because many people have continued to be a little more silent. Is it going to be difficult? I think so. But we need to remember that we have the armor of God. We cannot let just a few people continue to stand up for us and kind of cower behind them and say, oh, well, they're taking the arrows. They're doing so great. Good job. Thank you so much for what you're doing. We need to do this together. You're a parent. Your kids are worth it. Kind of my final wrap on this, I guess. So I talked about a few different things getting involved, right? You can get involved in your local clubs, things like that. You could donate. It just popped into my brain. We talk about in the political space that it's the T's. So your time, donate your time. Get involved in those clubs. Donate your treasures. If you have killer skills, right? God gifted us with special skills and abilities and talents. I'm reading through Exodus right now, actually. And it's really cool as I'm wrapping it. God gifted some crazy amazing talents to individuals to help build this elaborate tabernacle. Things that nowadays we would probably just have a machine quick whip out for us. He gifted talents to people to do that. And he has gifted talents to us as well. So you got time, talent, and finally your treasure. Make sure you're donating your treasure. If you don't have the time or you don't feel like you have the talent, donate your treasure to those individuals, so candidates that are willing to stand up, or certain organizations. Think about those hills as you're donating. What are your hills? Donate to causes that appropriately match with your hills. As we do finally wrap up this episode, I want to, number one, thank you for sticking with me. Like I said, I knew this was going to be a more intense one. This is definitely more coming from my heart. Usually I have some solid notes next to me as I dive into my podcasting, and today was definitely just more coming from my heart on the fly type of deal. But I want to leave you with a sense of urgency. We cannot afford to sit idly by anymore and let other people make our decisions and let other people who are louder, there are fewer, but they are louder, drive the decisions that are being made. These decisions are not only impacting you and me, they're impacting our kids and their kids and their kids. They are impacting our community as a whole. I look at Minnesota and think our state has completely shifted these last 2 years. As Christian parents, we have a responsibility to pay attention to the current events and educate ourselves and take action. Let us remember the 3 kids and the 3 adults who lost their lives at Covenant School this week. Let us pray for their families and for the end of violent hate crimes. As we go ahead into our lives, let us keep in mind the tips that we have discussed today, the things that I've mentioned. Pray on those. Let us stay informed. Let us stay engaged. and make sure that our voices are heard as we remember that we are protected by the armor of God. I urge you to take action, even if it's just a small step. Every effort counts, and together we can make a difference. We can make things shift. I want to thank you so much for listening, and let us go forth making positive impacts in God's name. Pray for the guidance and the strength to be the change that we all want and need. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ramblings of an Addict with Jenna Dix. Remember, if you are battling an addiction, reach out for help and support. There are many resources available to assist in your journey towards recovery. Surround yourself with a supportive community and never give up on the path towards a healthier and happier life. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and joining me on this journey. As you heard, I'm always rambling. But seriously, thank you for your support, and make sure to subscribe and follow my channel. I can't wait to share more with you on the next episode. Until then, keep on rambling. If you have found this podcast helpful and want to dive deeper into personal growth and self-improvement, be sure to head over to my website, jennadix.com. You'll find a wealth of resources there. There is a little less drugs, sex, and rock and roll these days, but whether you're interested in getting healthy, information on momming or parenting, or politics, jennadix.com has something for everyone. So, what are you waiting for? Head to jennadix.com today and start your journey towards personal growth and self-awareness. See you there.